We spoke with George Webb about, about 6 weeks ago, seems like something. Of course, we're already into the 6th month of the year. It's just blowing by like your typical week. But in any case, we have him on Caravan to Midnight right now. You know, he calls himself the accidental journalist. I'm thinking he's more like the providential journalist, George Webb, leading the charge in an ongoing project that ties together the people, places, and events of endemic corruption across the federal, state, and local agencies. A 4-month-old YouTube investigative series has tens of thousands of subscribers and a couple of million views. So he's doing something right, and we're going to talk to him right now. George, how are you?
Great, John. It's great to be back on your show again.
You know, with these little quips, these little pieces of information that come in text form, and then the little quips that are repeated through various news sources from fellows like Soros and people who just won't let it go, like Clinton. And then all of this, student activism and Antifa and this and that. I noticed they've been quiet for the most part this week, but I'm just, I'll tell you what, it just looks like the makings of, it feels like we've rolled the clock back to 1968, only it's the 21st century version, and it's just weird. So I know that you're out chasing down some things on Seth Rich, and we spoke with Liz Crokin yesterday, which was enlightening. She was delightful to speak with, but the information was rather disturbing. So I'm inclined to just kind of kick back and let you run with it.
John, you're going to get to be the guy who gives everybody the scoop. Watch today's videos for the kind of final pieces of the puzzle. And, you have to, in this business, you have to go up a set of stairs. And sometimes you can't build your own stairs. You need somebody to build the stairs for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need several different carpenters to build the stairs to go from one platform to the next. So you weren't the only platform builder for me, but there was a lot of other ones. But I feel like this is appropriate because you were one of those people that helped me get to the next level with the story. And
appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's coming to an end. The whole network. There's two ways to crack the whole corruption thing. It's I call it the Senate Armed Robbery Committee instead of the Armed Services Committee, unless you consider robbery a service.
Right.
But the whole cabal, Hillary, McCain, Lindsey Graham, Biden, all the people and going back to Lugar, so forth, Democrat and Republican, all connected via these secure BlackBerries. Cracking that BlackBerry network was the critical. The Circle Line tour, I don't know if you've gone to Manhattan, but the Circle Line tour is just going by me. And if you've never had it, I'm on Pier 62 right now. So if you've never done that, when you come to New York, don't do that Statue of Liberty tour. Take the one that goes all the way around the island of Manhattan. So I'm just throwing a plug so people know where I am and what time it is, because they can look back on the schedule. But
right.
So cracking the BlackBerry network was critical. The reason for it was pay to play, and it was the guy on the military side was Petraeus, and this is all in. What's the beautiful part about this is it's all in footprints. So there's metadata to support everything I'm saying. There already is a lot, and if Debbie Wasserman Schultz keeps having hearings, I might not have a story left. But I went to Capitol Hill last week, as a lot of my viewers saw, and that was really kind of gathering the last bits of string needed. And then, in every story, there's somebody that there's a couple of people that you have to, I wouldn't say betray, but you have to deceive them in order to get the larger story. So I'll just say that, and I'll just leave it right there. And that, but let's just say this: the intelligence agencies, everybody probably knows that, I've been fed breadcrumbs through intelligence agencies with the French and the Dutch and the Germans and the all these, and I got the email, the Proton mail to show it, as well as the Russians and as well as the Serbians, but it was the people such as yourself. It was the crowdsource the news, crowdsource the truth. I'm sorry, Jason. Crowdsourcethetruth.org. It was the H.A. Goodmans. It was the Jeff Rentzes. It was the John B. Wells. You're going to be famous after this, John. By the way, well, you're already famous, but you're going to have anything you want.
I'll settle for a shrimp cocktail.
You're going to get a shrimp cocktail out of this, brother.
Okay.
This is the real deal. And there's two ways that the network was cracked, and one way was Huma's 650,000 emails. Now, I'm talking about two things. One's rat lines, and the other is the pay-to-play for the different defense contracts.
Yeah.
So I had to work on the BlackBerries with the Awan brothers and get that whole that's the BlackBerry side of this. That's the same BlackBerries that are going to be doing the pay-to-play. And their big weapons programs. All the subcontractors are forced to use the BlackBerries. So you crack the BlackBerries, you get the whole thing. The other way to get this, but McCabe wouldn't release it, is the 650,000 Huma emails. Either way, one way or the other, you get the emails. Once you get the emails, the whole thing falls apart. And I mean falls apart. This started when Hillary took the Senate. A little bit before that, when she put in the spy network in 1999, but then the whole thing got put in as far as pay-to-play, because she had nothing to negotiate with until she got on the Senate Armed Robbery Services Committee. And then that's when this whole thing unfolded. Of course, a lot of people probably saw me at when we live streamed from David Petraeus last night at the 92nd Street Y. And yeah, it's yours. This is yours.
Wow. So.
Yeah.
Oh boy! So just bring everybody.
When I'm on Chernovich tomorrow, you're going to realize this is all happening.
Oh boy!
So you got your open forum to ask questions.
Yeah. Well, look. So since we talked, just go ahead and let it rip, man. What have you actually discovered regarding Mr. Rich?
Well, Seth Rich is just one victim. I've said that from the beginning. It's following the trails in all the bodies, and each one gives you a different piece. Like you said, I've called this open source investigation kind of a family puzzle, because what I do, if viewers aren't familiar with me, is I take the open source intelligence that I get from my viewers who are doing all these Google searches, and in every one of these murders and so forth, there's 3 or 4 pieces that don't make sense. Now, that may be frustrating to a lot of people, but if you're collecting and you know the modus operandi over a long period of time, it's almost like learning different authors and how they speak, and learning their cadence, or learning how John B. Wells talks versus H.A. Goodman talks. So you can almost anticipate the next word they say. If you listen to enough Caravan to Midnight, you can almost tell how you go into commercial, for instance. I'm getting a lot of McCabe overhead. I always salute our law enforcement. So anyway, that's how you fill in the blanks on a lot of these things. So all that's metadata. Even though a lot of people are frustrated with different things, Vince Foster, whatever it is, there's usually a signature in there.
Yeah.
And you can tell a George H.W. Bush signature from a Hillary signature from a mile away. And it's just a matter of putting those signatures together to write the book. And each and that's where we're at today. And you're going to see that. It's going to actually unfold tomorrow. So
well.
But the key is the BlackBerries. And let me give you an example. Okay. So imagine David Petraeus going to the Senate Armed Services Committee and meeting Hillary, and Joe Biden coming over and shaking her hand, and David Petraeus' hand, and then overcomes John McCain and overcomes Graham. And now George Bush is president, and wouldn't it be great if we had a weapons program Now, the F-35 weapons program was already underway, and I can't remember how it started out, like an XPS, some kind of joint strike fighter. It was a joint strike fighter, I believe. So it had started in Hillary's time in like 95. So this F-35 has been on the books now for, I think, since 95. And this was always her play. This was always her pay to play, was the F-35, the joint strike fighter. And she was going to go through NATO. And the reason why you have to go through NATO is they were going to go out of the White House. And there was no more influence. So Bill, you can see this in all the Clinton email documents. There's the Bills on one side, the Hills on the other side. You got Justin Cooper and you got Doug Band and Lanny. They just want to have a good time. But then there's the Hillarys or the Hills that are all the Ivy Leaguers. They want everything, and they've, dream up all these pay-to-play schemes and these Bridgewater investment hedge funds and these Lockheed, lobbyists and the Raytheon lobbyists, and that's more of a cabal. It's more of a meeting. It's more of a conspiracy where they all sit down together and figure out how do we milk this thing for contributions for the rest of our careers. This is a 20-year project. This isn't a, hey, let's all go down to, Davos and have a great time and, check out the chicks, That was the Bills. The Hills are much more, let's milk this thing for 20 years and we'll get campaign contributions. McCain will get contributions from Raytheon. Lindsey Graham will get, in South Carolina, will get his from the Navy. Biden will, use the Naval Observatory as a spy network, and he'll do pay-to-play schemes in Ukraine and Kosovo through his sons, and it'll be a very controllable network because you can stay in the Senate for 20, 25 years. So if Hillary loses the presidency, she could still go back and be a senator from New York. She'll never do that now. But McCain is still in the Senate, and so is Lindsey Graham, obviously, and Biden's only recently out of power. So he was either a vice president, being the most powerful senator, really, in organizing the different committees. So, and he has, and the vice president, not a lot of people know, has the power of the Naval Observatory, which is just up the street from the British Embassy on Massachusetts Avenue, and that is the key to the whole surveillance network for these rat lines. And I'm talking about two rat lines now. I'm talking about the rat lines of war, what I call the rat lines of war, and that's going to be your organ harvesting and your drug trafficking and your child trafficking and all that. Those are the spoils of war, and then also your police contracts through DynCorp. Those are all your DynCorp rat lines. That's Steve Feinberg. And then you're going to have your pay-to-play rat line, which is different. That's all going to be run through the Congress. So different senators are going to control that pay-to-play. So that's why you need a spy network on one side to control the pay-to-play network on the Congress side. And that's why you need a rat lines of war, Steve Feinberg. You still need BlackBerries now to connect all this. You need secure BlackBerries to connect the whole communications network. And with the BlackBerries, you're sending the emails, okay? So compromising emails, the 650,000 emails opens the whole investigation up, or intercepting the BlackBerry traffic, the encrypted triple DES BlackBerry traffic, which has been done now. And I didn't need Hammer 2 at NGA in St. Louis to do it. I didn't do it, but somebody did it. And that cracks the network as well. So even if McCabe sits on the 650,000 emails, you still crack the network by cracking the triple DES. And that's it. I mean, Clapper puts the whole thing together. It's a beautiful system. It's ingenious, actually. I still say, I know people want to degrade him, but he's a genius. Brennan is his dimmer, but Brennan's pretty damn good as well. And it's their network. They put the whole intelligence side of this network together, and all the way back to when Clapper was at NGA. Clapper is really the architect of the whole thing, and it's a beautiful network. It's a thing of beauty.
But who's the genius?
Clapper.
Oh, Clapper.
I believe Clapper's the genius, because Clapper, before, you got to realize, he was all the way back to Vietnam as the Air Force general. So he's going to be the guy who's using the Air Force equipment to fly everything around. He's going to be the guy who thinks up, flying stuff into Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha. He's the genius of the whole, I would say, logistics. He's the FedEx of this whole system. And he came up with a covert communications network using these BlackBerries. McCain's going to be your key funder of RIM in the Congress. Yeah, so everybody's playing a part in this Shakespearean play, and the way you have to have it that way. Hillary isn't doing everything. If that were true, Hillary would be the most amazing person ever. It is a conspiracy because it has to be. It's too complex for just one person. So Lindsey Graham has to be the guy who attack dogs anybody in the Senate who gets near this story, right? So he has to run out into the Senate foyer there at the hard office building and do the diatribe against whoever starts getting close. So everybody has a role to play, and it's lasted now, I think, ever since, well, at least since 1999. So, and there's a presidential directive, and just for people who are now saying this is the craziest story I've ever heard, just go to my website or Google Presidential Decision Directive 62 to create a union between the FBI and the CIA, signed by Bill Clinton in May of 1998. And that really releases all the funds. It's very vaguely written to create a disruption campaign, but all the money for that is funding the security forces, the FBI in the counterterrorism division. It's funding this guy named Andrew McCabe to put in this counterterrorism network, there's a big wall between the field FBI, which is the not uncorruptible, but pretty darn clean sworn agents, and this new CIA infiltration of agents all over the world to run these rat lines. And in the United States, that David Petraeus writes that network and he calls it Joint Task Force on something, and they rename it Joint Terrorism Task Force in the United States, JTTF. It's sort of an intimidation network of local police forces and state police forces and other federal agencies with intelligence agencies with enforcement power. And that becomes the program in the U.S. And it gets launched the JTTF gets funded with the crime bill, and that's why Hillary was pushing the crime bill so hard. So that gets funded I think they tried the first time in 95 and then the 96, and they keep doing these things to kind of push it along. And then 1998, they still can't get the Patriot Act through because you need illegal search and seizure. You need a lot of things to enable this enforcement network. And so finally, 9/11 happens, and then the Patriot Act sails through. And the biggest thing is the illegal search and seizure. You need illegal search and seizure to make the network go. But they were trying to do it with executive orders bit by bit. So you're going to start with Presidential Decision Directive about 62, then you're going to see a 63 that does a little bit more, and a 64 that does a little bit more, and 65. But they couldn't get there. They couldn't get that Fourth Amendment out of the way. And then they finally, with 9/11, was the perfect coincidence, because then they got the Patriot Act sailed through. And if you look at the 28 pages that George Tenet suppressed as director of the FBI out of the 9/11 report, it basically is the blueprint. We're going to have fusion centers in every state. We're going to have a Department of Homeland Security. We're going to fuse all the data from local, state, and federal. I'm going to walk away from the barking dog. We're going to fuse all the data together in these fusion centers. Well, if you look at Doug Valentine's book, he wrote a book called Phoenix Project. It's just a redo of the Phoenix Project, which is you first start with a headquarters, and start with regional offices, the torture centers, and then you fan out from there, and then you develop an enemies list. That's just how the CIA does things. And the same thing has happened. So deplorables in the United States, the translation is deplorables. So the enemies list or the kill list in Vietnam in Doug Valentine's book, is now just translated to deplorables, and that's Hillary's deplorables plan. So, and instead of outright, kill squads, you're going to have soft jihad. You're going to have opiate targeting, and it's going to start with veterans. You're going to take out veterans, gun owners, et cetera, but people who are, kind of sticking up for the Constitution, et cetera. You're going to mock them as well, because you want anybody who says anything about the Constitution to be mocked, because the Constitution is your enemy in this little 1984 private security network. And I know that's a lot of words, and that's why it's hard to get all in one go, and that's why I break it up over 221 days. And it's a lot of videos. It's 700 videos, but it's really more like a tour de force, really, and it's really done by the American people and a very small group of committed searchers that put this thing together. I would say less than 1,000 people, and the work product is out there. You can Google it, and it gets better for every version. It gets better with every version. I'll stop talking now. Have I confused you adequately?
No, actually, you haven't. So
okay, is that understandable?
I think it is. So there is a cabal, and the deep state would be Clapper, Clinton, Comey, and who else?
Well, McCabe's got to be in there. You've got to have McCain in there. You've got to have Lindsey Graham in there. You've got to have Biden in there. Just think of the Senate Armed Services Committee in 2002 or 2001.
Yeah.
And then you're going to bring new people in as new senators come in. So like a Ben Sass, you're going to bring a Ben Sass from Nebraska in. And it's kind of one of those graduation ceremonies, when you bring a Ben Sass in. And that's going to be the center of the cabal, okay? Now, a lot of people are talking. I'm sorry, I'm real near a heliport right now.
Can't hear it.
But a lot of people are... Can you hear?
No, we can't hear the helicopters.
Oh, okay, you can't hear the helicopter. Oh, great. So a lot of people are going to be involved, but the House is got a couple of committees. So really, I don't even want to call it a cabal. I just think of it as a good working company. With good management practices. The underlings, your junior managers, are the House, and they're mainly to be kind of propped in front of CNN to tell the story. It's kind of stage management. They're kind of stagehands. The real action is in the Senate, and the real boys club, and Hillary kind of broke the ceiling in that boys club, is the Senate Armed Services Committee and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee is going to be all your oil plays, your gas plays, your mineral plays, all that stuff, USAID plays, that sort of thing, and arms deals, and then your that's it, and then that's you got to get to the Senate I'm sorry, when you get over to the Senate Armed Services Committee, that's going to be all your arms deals, which is just as lucrative, if not more lucrative, than the resource plays from the Foreign Relations Committee. And that is actually how it works. And so you have to control that Senate Armed Services Committee if you want the pay-to-play for the weapons contracts. You have to control that Foreign Affairs Committee if you want the mineral, oil, gas, earth resources play.
Yeah. So I take it that these cost overruns, for example, with the F-35, are deliberate. That's what this information suggests.
Yeah, so the game they ran on the F-35 is, and here's where everybody kind of gets, thrown by their little, there's a little three-card monte going on here, which is, I want the program to go on as long as possible, because I'm not going to make my money with the Lockheed. It's a big company, and the sugar is spread over a lot of shareholders. Now, I still want Lockheed to do well, but where I really want to put my money is in the stuff that hangs off the Lockheed. You put your money in the Raytheon missiles. You want to put your money in the UV pickup system, so it's going to be like your Textron lenses, your surveillance systems. In the cockpit, you're going to want to pick up, and there's going to be different small startups like I have God, type systems, and different helmets, the special helmets. That's why the F-35 The helmet looks like, the fly. It looks like Jeff Greenberg couldn't get that damn thing on if he tried. The pilots, if the pilots were over 5'8", they couldn't turn their head. The helmet was so damn big. They didn't really care about the pilot's experience. They just wanted to put as much electronic trash as they could in that helmet so that they would get it, so it would be a good Christmas tree. And so the Senate Armed Services Committee, through surrogates, they're not stupid. They're going to go through their wife or their brother or their son or whatever. They're going to take positions like Petraeus has got a strong position in Textron. McCain has a strong position in Raytheon. And you're going to delay that because you want the public to pay all the R&D development. You want that to last as long as possible and develop the intellectual property as long as possible. And if you look at the story of the F-35, they actually had to change the name because the Joint Strike Fighter went on so long that people are going to be like, they're going to start complaining. Let's just call this a new plane. And the same thing with the F-22 Raptor. Basically, they get about halfway through and say, we've got to punch something out. The F-35 is just basically a watered-down, a sized-down version of the F-22 with let's put in a bigger engine, for GE, and then the folks over at, I can't remember, in Maryland, the other guys who make the engine got mad. The people that, I can't remember their name right now. It's not General Dynamics. But anyway, you get the idea, let's put a bigger engine in there, to make this guy happy or that guy happy. But the thing is this kind of Frankenstein, the F-35 is this Frankenstein agglutination of different pay-to-play schemes. And the reason why the F-35 is built in 39 different states, or maybe it's 38 or 40, I can't remember exactly which, is to have every senator has to have two fingers. So that they get 80 senators. When you build it in 40 states, you got 80 senators. That's a quorum. Even if you have 20 that stand up and say, this is the biggest, boondoggle ever, you still have a majority. You still have a ability to override a filibuster with 60. So that's why they went all the way to 80, which is really overkill because you think there would be some statesmanship and some statecraft where they wouldn't need all 80. But that's the name of the game. And the F-35, you're going to find Comey was involved. And in Bridgewater, I can't remember the guy who started it, but he goes from Lockheed to Bridgewater exactly for the reason to set that up. He's setting up the positions in all the startups, all the stuff that hangs off the F-35. Now, I'm not just saying it's an F-35 pay-to-play system. I'm just using that as a model. You're going to have the same thing with helicopters, the MH-C helicopter, the different Blackhawks and all that crap. And you gotta spread it out. You can't give everything to Lockheed. You got to give some to Boeing. Everybody's got to be happy, and there's negotiations and so forth in this stuff. But the 650,000 emails is going to be about half pay-to-play on the arms deals, and about half pay-to-play on these foreign relations deals, these mineral plays. So Biden is more of a mineral guy. He's more of an oil and gas guy and a mineral guy. He's going to be working with Frank Juster on that side with the foreign relations stuff. I don't really think he's got many positions on the arms side, but McCain's more and Graham are more on the arms side, and so you're going to see more pay-to-play with them on the arms side. So, and then the surveillance side goes both ways. In investing in the DHS network is a Christmas tree for everybody. There's DHS grants for everybody. There's DHS grants for local. There's DHS grants, or there's state grants, and there's federal supplements now that, like our IRS has armed agents. About everybody in the DHS Christmas tree of 22 agencies now is buying bulletproof vests and, armor-piercing long rifles and all that crap with gas masks and Narcan, antidote, if they have to spray an area, to subdue. So, do you really want your IRS agents showing up in an MRAP with, 8 guys coming out with long rifles? So I don't want to throw too many details, but I do want to paint the picture of exactly what those emails contain. And what I'm saying is the BlackBerry network, you don't need the 650,000 emails on a Huma's server if you have the BlackBerry network cracked. Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't a little bit of espionage, a little bit of spycraft. I'm not saying somebody went out and bought a hammer too and cracked it. The brute force and ignorance method. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying there are whistleblowers. There's going to be a couple. There's going to be 2 whistleblowers at NGA. They haven't come forward yet. I hadn't been able to figure out if they're the same ones that talked to Devin Nunes or not. That one day when he goes over to the Eisenhower building, on the side of the White House there. I thought it was initially, but I think now it's 2 other guys. But it all goes back to NGA. Clapper's in the NGA Hall of Fame, and he designed the whole thing. And he moved it from, and I don't know if it's Sterling, Virginia, or it's Leesburg Road. I think where's Hammer 1 was on Leesburg Road. This is the whole Larry Klayman and Dennis Montgomery thing. And then he moves it to St. Louis and builds a nice new shiny thing. And so all these stories about, hey, they're flying in these Muslim guys in the middle of the night, and they're not checking them at all, for the Customs Border Protection Service.
Yeah.
It's all to staff up that facility with interpreters, for the CENTCOM area, and then they're bringing in, Spanish-speaking interpreters for the SOCOM area and so forth. So you have to staff that up with interpreters, and now Trump's got the travel ban. So all these things start falling into place. Once you understand that initial structure of the Armed Services Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee, everything starts just falling into place because it's out there in front. You can go on the web right now and Google who's in the Armed Services Committee, and there it is. That's the cabal. And then the Foreign Affairs is going to be your other one. A little bit with Homeland Security also. Homeland Security is kind of the new kid in town, where a lot of money gets dumped. So I would throw Homeland Security in there a little bit, but still not nearly the size of pay to play as Foreign Affairs and Armed Services. And you have to have. You don't control the White House. You have to have that because you go compromise NATO. You get all the NATO generals. You use your spies, Valerie Plame being one of them. Use your spies to compromise the generals. You compromise Bouchard and all the other guys. You give Chandalone all the money for all the parties. All the anti-terrorism money goes to parties. And Chandalone, basically, most of the anti-terrorism money that NATO got, Chandalone is running that, compromising the generals over there. Lockheed is compromising the generals here in the U.S., and they've been doing that for a long time. And that's the key to NATO and owning NATO is no matter who's in the White House, I still have my rat lines. I still have my armed services deals, and I still have my foreign affairs deals. Now, I don't get the share I want. I go from 60-40 to 40-60. But everybody works together. That's one thing. When it comes time to do the National Defense Authorization Act, you see these guys who are normally always fighting, for one seat, to swing one way or the other, and then they come together and vote 98-1, on NDAA. And that's why, because everyone understands the game. It's 60-40, 40-60. Now, I'm not saying the senators understand the whole network. That was figured out by about 1,000 researchers in this project, over 700 videos, and I was the stenographer, so I'm no genius, but that was figured out by the American people with some sprinkling from the foreign intelligence services.
Gotcha. The big concern for everyone is how powerful, and it's sort of like, well, we know it's powerful, but how powerful is it? This cabal, and it can't be just operating within the United States. Certainly they have to have their global partners. So let me ask you this. Yes. When anybody starts, typically when somebody starts accusing their mate of cheating and always questioning and always voicing their suspicions, well, then you can pretty well figure that they're the one doing the cheating. That's just historically been the case, regardless of who you talk to about it. But the other thing is this. We keep hearing the Russians, the Russians, the Russians, the Russians, which suggests to me that there's way more cooperation between the stateside cabal and the Russians than anybody wants to actually be known. Are you picking up any sort of any sort of cooperation across the ocean blue and the other one across the ocean green with some people over there?
Yeah,
surely it's got to be a global network.
Great question. The wind's picking up here, so let me know if that's a problem.
That's all right.
Hillary, I got great news for Schiff and Schumer and on Andy Weiner and Monster Worldwide and Debbie Wasserman Schultz and all the Awan brothers and everybody in the cabal, or everybody a part of, let's just call it a company, everybody a part of that operation. Because I don't like the cabal because it sounds, being Israeli, I don't know. And I mean being Jewish. So it is the Russians, okay? Hillary and all of them are right. It is the Russians. But it's not about the election. It's about the business and the way they're running the business. And they're running the business in a very public, open corruption kind of Tammany Hall way. And I don't know if you ever saw the Martin Scorsese, Five Gangs in New York, but they go down to Boss Tweed and Tammany Hall, and they say the public has to believe it's a square game. The public has to believe it's a fair game. So let's go get 5 guys and just hang them. And while we're robbing everybody blind, we got to say these 5, blind dogs are what the cause was. And so it's not just the Russians that are taking her down. And this, there's Bilderberg is meeting down in Washington and Chantilly, Virginia today, first day. And I saw Petraeus last night at 92nd Street Y, and I just gave him a wink because I know he's going to be down there. And I said, today I did a film. I said, it's the Russians. Everyone in this global business conference wants Hillary out because she's bad for business.
I'll say.
And Blake Farenthold is going to be brought up on the House side, and you're going to have some new guy on the Senate side, and they're going to reform, I believe, around Tulsi Gabbard, because you got to have people that people trust in and don't just have this open contempt for business. It's bad for business. Hillary is bad for business. So what's happening right now in the House is Hillary's last, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz is kind of that representative in the House. Schiff is that guy in Schiff is that guy in this is kind of the intelligence guy in the House, and then you've got Schumer obviously leads the charge on the Senate side, and then you've got Anthony Weiner. Believe it or not, don't believe any of this sexting stuff. He knows Ehud Barak very well, and I'll just say it right now. I'm not a Zionist, but I believe Israel has a right to exist, and I do have done my favors for Israel. So I'm just going to be right up front about that. But Andrew Weiner runs the Awan brothers, and he runs that intelligence network, that intelligence gathering network. Or if it's a Pakistani nationals are in your country doing that, as an American, you may think that's not intelligence gathering, that's treason. So it's all in the eye of the beholder here. But so that group, that staff, let's just call it staff, is going to be pushed out. Farenthold is going to be brought in. You're seeing the death throes of it. Yes, it's right now. I mean, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is trying to accuse everyone in Congress of running the spy network, and she keeps having these open public hearings. She just had the chief, the CAO, the chief administrative officers staff on the carpet for giving the Awan brothers too much top secret clearance. She just had the guy for the Capitol Police, the chief, she threatened his budget 3 times for not giving up the stolen laptops that the Awan brothers stole and the stolen BlackBerries they stole. So they're still sitting in an evidence cage over, supposedly, down at 119 D Street. So she is publicly making the case that this is what is actually happening. The Awan brothers screwed up. Hillary screwed up. They got they got too flamboyant. They the Wan brothers, the four of them made $160,000 a year. Their wives also made $160,000 a year. Even the 22-year-old brother, right? That draws a lot of attention. Those are all public records. They have 12 houses. They have 12 businesses. They have all these import-export companies. They, have all these satellite technology companies. They have all these biotech companies. That's just not usual for a congressional staffer just coming into Washington, working for, one congressman. So, I went to Washington, Webb went to Washington, and I talked to everybody and said, do you make $160,000 a year? Do you make $160,000? No, I'm an intern working here for free. My rich buddy makes $30,000.
Right.
So that whole thing is so obvious now that they have to move it over to the Republican side and realign. So they have to realign around Pence as the president. You got to have, I don't know who will be the vice president. You'll probably bring in somebody like, who knows? But then you can realign everything. You can keep McCabe you got to keep McCabe. If you want to keep this together, you got to keep McCabe as the FBI director. Brennan is out. But now, when I saw the indictments yesterday, or not the indictments, when I saw the witness list for the unmasking that Grassley came out with yesterday,
yeah,
Susan Rice got hit, and then trying to remember who else is on that. Samantha Powers, the UN ambassador, got hit with that, and then Brennan got hit. So. And everybody knows that's how Mike Flynn and Carter Page and Paul Manafort and Trump all got unmasked. So it'll be interesting to see if Grassley really pursues that or if he just writes a letter. A lot of times they'll just, there's public outrage, so they'll write a letter. There's public outrage that Andrew McCabe took a $675,000 bribe, to 2 days after Hillary's story broke about the private server. And then he in the New York Times in March of 6th, 2015. So 2 days later, his wife is immediately installed. The candidate in Virginia for that state Senate seat is told, "This isn't your turn today." The candidate's installed 2 days later, and Terry McAuliffe gives him a $675,000 bribe that day. So what did Grassley do? I mean, Grassley's the only person who even covered that story. In the ethics committee, he just wrote a letter and just said, "This disturbs me greatly." They've never called McCabe to ask him about that. So that's what I call a demonstration. You have to demonstrate that it's a not a rigged system, right? So it'll be interesting to see if they call Susan Rice first, and then the Antifada, as you mentioned, come out and say, "This is racism," or if they call Samantha Powers after that, women in positions of power, But if they call Brennan first and really get into some vicious questioning about there's only one way, there's only 5 agencies that can do this unmasking, and the buck stops at ODNI, CIA, and FBI. So it's either you, McCabe, or Clapper. Which is it? Because we're going to indict all 3 of you. If you don't come clean. If you hear that kind of testimony, that means Trump's figured it out. Now, there is this kind of New Zealand thing with Mike Pompeo, the FBI coup thing with Kin.com that's swirling out there. So I don't know the veracity of that yet. I have to drill down on that. But the bottom line is, you got to bring in Tulsi Gabbard or somebody, or on the presidential side, you're going to have Pence. But then the next round, the Democrats will rotate Tulsi Gabbard. Schumer's got to go. Schiff's got to go. Debbie Wasserman Schultz has got to go. The Wan brothers got to get cleaned out. And then you got to put something like that in onto the Republican side. So Blake Farenthold is your kind of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and then I can't remember the guy on the Intelligence Committee in the Senate. Burr is going to be your Schumer, new Schumer, and it's more like a majority whip. Only the majority whips aren't for party, because the parties are kind of not really relevant. The majority whip is really right now is going to be Burr. he's going to be directing and say, here's the way we're going to go, Senate. And then when the Democrats take over, it's going to be Schumer as kind of the majority whip. And the minority whip's the same way. They're going to be the minority whips are more media. So the majority whips are going to be doing the votes, and the minority whips are going to be doing the CNN, stuff. And it's shifting. It's shifted over. And basically, what you've seen in the last, since Trump's been elected, is the minority and majority whips were Democrats. It's been Schumer and Schiff, CNN, right? Now they're going to flip over, the Jeff Zuckers of the world, and are going to flip over, and now we're going to see a lot less of the Schumer and Schiff show as these things come to light. Again, it's how hard Grassley in the Judiciary Committee pursues this. And you'll know right away by the witness, not just by the witness list, but by who's called will be the litmus test. So, but anyway, if the BlackBerry thing is true, if the triple DES did get broken, and so that means a whole bunch of different agencies working together to break it with these foreign intelligence agencies have got that. They don't need Andrew McCabe to release the 650,000 human emails. They've got blackmail on everybody in the Senate, both on the foreign intelligence side, foreign affairs side, and on the armed services side. You see what I mean? The whole repository is out there, even if the 650,000 emails don't come out. Now, by McCabe. McCabe's sitting on them. He says he needs 5 years to go through them. Now, remember, these are emails of 19 different State Department employees that are illegally using ClintonEmail.com and Gmail accounts. Okay? So if this comes out, Hillary is sacrificed, but it's probably better that they come out. Then it depreciates the assets of these foreign intelligence agencies that have it anyway. It's better that the secret's out and just take your lumps now before an election cycle, rather than letting the foreign intelligence agencies control the cycle right before an election by releasing things selectively. And they can release things selectively for years. So you deal very high cards to the foreign intelligence agencies if you don't just come clean right now, if that makes any sense. They have it. Now, the rumor is they've cracked the BlackBerry network, and everybody knows the BlackBerry network's used to run these war rat lines, and it's being used to run these pay-to-play rat lines.
Yeah, you know what I find interesting? You mentioned the Awan brothers a while ago. There's a question here. How do the Awan brothers flee to Pakistan while under criminal investigations? Well, fake passports is one way. So what about Barrington J. Wisenant Jr., Wisenant. As a matter of fact, your name comes up here on the on a Reddit
I broke
site.
that story yesterday. So what? Now I'm talking about the Hillary side of the network here, not the Republican side. The Republican side is going to be different. It's going to be coming in through Fort Huachuca down with John McCain, and he's going to have his own operative. And I haven't really cracked that side of the network. But the Hillary side of the network is going to be coming through here in New York at the New York Film Academy. And I released the name yesterday of a Pakistani ISI just as a model. I don't have the resources, so and these are always painful decisions because sometimes, like I said, a little deception in intelligence work is required. But I'm moving away from these kids. They're pretty noisy here on Pier 62. But wait a minute, make sure I got all my batteries here. Oops, I left the battery. I don't want to do that. They're going to think I'm a spy, so I better just go back and get the battery. Hillary. So through the New York Film Academy, there's also going to be a company in Chevy Chase, Maryland called DAI, which is going to be the USAID funnel. The USAID funnel is it's called Development Alternatives. That's going to be another way to get people in on visas. I'm not sure if Anthony Weiner used DAI or New York Film Academy for the Awan brothers.
I mean, I don't get it. What's the tie-in between the American Film Academy and the Awan
what
brothers?
you do is you do an once I have a company or a nonprofit, then I do an H-1B visa.
Gotcha.
And I bring them in as
Gotcha.
H-1Bs. So you're going to bring people in through a front, a foreign affairs front called Inter-America. And I have a source in Congress for this. And Inter-America, believe it or not, does the IT services for about 150 congressmen, Democratic congressmen. Now, I don't know if Inter-America does those services for Republicans or not. I haven't confirmed that yet. But Inter-America, believe it or not, is mostly sourced through the Latin America until about 1999. And then they switch over. And most Americans don't know that foreign nationals are administrating the IT equipment, the laptops and BlackBerries of their congressmen and senators. And that's usually a surprise to people. But they switch over to Pakistanis in 1999. So the Awans come here. Imran Awan comes here in 1999. Gulen comes here in 1999 to do the soft targeting, the opiate targeting of veterans. And it's going to be kind of a replay of, anyway, that's how it's done. It's Anthony Weiner's H-1Bs, and then the EB-5s. They were also using EB-5s. Now, what the New York Film Academy has 3 locations in the U.S.
Try to turn away from the wind a little bit, George.
What's that?
Try to turn away from the wind a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to try to get to a closed area. I'm sorry. It's really windy. Okay, let me move over.
That's good.
I hope you can edit this out. Okay, so it's both EB-5s. These are visas. It's both EB-5s and H-1Bs. And I think there's some other H-1s in there too, but the 2 biggies are H-1Bs and EB-5s. The EB-5 is you're a Saudi sheikh and you're about ready to get arrested for something, or Pakistani ISI. I bring you in if you have $1 million. That's easy. I don't need to do any sponsorship agreements or anything like that. If you're Imran Awan with no money and you're an operative, then I got to write up a little thing about how you're going to make mangoes grow bigger or something. I got to write some kind of USAID cover for what you're doing here in the U.S. Then I put you over to work at Inter-America, and now you're intercepting congressmen's phones, BlackBerries, and laptops. So that's how he did it, and Wysant was all over it because New York Film Academy was in Broward County and in Debbie Wasserman Schultz's district. And there's a story that already broke in L.A. about EB-5 abuse. So what McCabe did is he sharded it to look like 3 different investigations. So you'll have the EB-5 in L.A. He was going to shard Wysant to H-1Bs. I broke the H-1Bs here in New York yesterday. I named the name of the guy, which I feel bad about because I needed to kind of deceive somebody a little bit that I care about a lot. And so that was the U.S. case, and that's why Wysant was killed. And I do regret that I didn't get there quicker. And people die in this stuff, unfortunately. But that's what he was working on. And the guy who was the State Department guy, who's really CIA, he's got a arts cover. His Posolico, Posolico, Posolico. I published his LinkedIn. Posolico. You may want to publish this earlier than later, by the way, John. Posolico family is a big construction family on Long Island, big construction family. Anyway, Posolico has been bringing in people ever since he's in the Stratford papers. It goes all the way back to 2004. So anyway, Posolico is the State Department guy that's pushing the visas through. And he's pushing it through on national security. These people are vital to national security as operatives and intelligence operatives, etc. That's what's happening there.
Who's this guy, Warren Flood?
Well, that's a wink. That's CIA wink. It's War. I don't know what his real name is. I think it's Pasolico, is Warren Flood, but I don't really know. I'm just guessing it's Pasolico. But that's a CIA wink is when you create a name that's a funny, like War and Flood.
Yeah.
That's how we make money.
Sure.
USAID makes money on floods. So Hillary cracks a dam, and after they take positions in real estate near to build a children's hospital in Faisalabad. So once they take a position and cheat 12 farmers out of their land, now this is Imran Awan's father that does this. His name's Mohammed Shah. They crack the dam, and then Biden Kerry's at the White House the next day, and Rajiv Shah, the young kid who runs USAID, is right there to dole out the USAID. But that's the Warren Flood. So it's not a real name. It's Pasolico, I think. I'm not sure. But so Warren Flood, when all this stuff hits, you got to have a cover, okay? And so there's two leaks. One is going to be Seth Rich, and the other is going to be Eric Braverman. And nobody has I broke the Braverman story 220 days ago. Just nobody believes me, but it's coming.
Well,
but anyway, now that it's out there, I'll just finish the Warren Flood thing. Now it's out there. I need a cover. So they come up with this Guccifer 2. Now, if you remember Guccifer 1, he was more of a cover for an extortion thing that they did 2 years previously at Sony. They wanted to take out Amy Pascal as the CEO. So McCabe did a deep dive on all her email, and in the email was these off-color jokes about Obama. So what you do is then you throw shade on the thing by saying he also wanted to see George Bush's artwork, But this is the guy who said, Goose 1 is the guy who said, in Romania, supposedly, I would read Hillary's email, and then I would go out in the garden on my he lives in a shack with a laptop. Do you really believe he hacked Hillary? Well, they want you to believe Hillary is a ninny, but she's actually very sophisticated. I have several emails where she's sending people BlackBerry settings, and I'm talking about flag settings for BlackBerry to put things in different folders and so forth, numerical flag settings. She's not the dope that that MWW is trying to purport. MWW is Anthony Weiner's advertising firm, PR firm. So Warren Flood, they come up with Guccifer to explain all these hacks. So the reason, or Guccifer, what they're doing is going around to Hollywood. Tom Nitis is her guy. I know this gets confusing, but Tom Nitis and John Podesta basically work the donation cycle. So Tom Nitis works the investment side in New York with all the bankers for hacking them and then extorting donations from them, and then he works the producers in Hollywood for their hacks. So Nitis goes to Amy Pascal and says, hey, we could really use $500,000 for Hillary for America. And Amy Pascal says, well, how about 50? It's going to be something like this. It's not this. These aren't exact numbers, but 500,000 was about the right number. I think Katzenberg gives $1 million. Spielberg gives $1 million, somewhere in there. And anyway, oh no, okay. 2 weeks later, something like this. This is going to be the chronology. Something like this. Oops! Here comes all these Sony hacks, and Amy Pascal has to step down because she says all these jokes about Obama. They're looking for anything. McCabe's going to put like 50 agents on this deep dive and find something bad. Okay? And they did. And they got rid of Amy Pascal. And they put their guy in there. Or usually, if they don't get their guy in there, they threaten and do the same thing. But now you got to cover. With Guccifer, you have to cover the first hack, right? So you come up with this cockamamie story about, he also wanted to see George Bush's artwork. Okay. So anyway, he goes to jail in 2014, and he's in jail in 2015 and 16. Now he's in Virginia. He's over in Arlington County, Virginia. I do a show from there. And I say this, these guys are going to come back as star witnesses because now he's in jail. You can't use him as a cover for all these new hacks because Hillary's running to reelect. The DNC leaks are out there. You got to cover that with a hack. you just hacked the Democratic caucus as well with the Awan brothers on Capitol Hill. You got to cover that hack. Now the Podesta leaks come out after Seth Rich is dead. Now you got to cover that hack. So what do? We're sitting there. Tom Donilon meets with Podesta at the White House along with Robbie Mook. Robbie Mook's a runner in this thing. It's really Donilon and Podesta. They meet on the 26th in the White House. You can check the White House logs. And they set it up. They meet several times. They meet 300 times. But they come up with this, this is going to be a meeting earlier than that. They meet on the 22nd to set up the Seth Rich murder, 26th. They meet earlier than that before the Seth Rich hack is going to happen between May 25th and the 30th or 31st of May. So anyway, they come up with this Guccifer 2. Well, Guccifer 1's in jail. We can't use Guccifer 1, so rather than come up with a whole new name, let's call him Guccifer 2. We've already pre-sold the American public on Guccifer 1. Let's do Guccifer 2. And we'll say he did the Seth Rich hack, so that's where the whole Russia cockamamie scheme comes in, and then Andy McCabe pays this Steele guy the money to do the Trump dossier, the PP dossier. And then they also say, and this hasn't really come out in the news yet, he also did the DCC hack, and then the Podesta leaks come out with Eric Braverman, and then they're going to say Goose 2 did the Podesta leaks. So, he's the goose that got all the gander. He's the goose that can be used. It's a floor wax and a dessert topping. So, we're going to use Goose 2 to mop up anything that leaks between now and the election, and that's what happened. Now, Hillary pulled just to make sure the original Goose 1 didn't chirp before all this. When the May hack happens, I think they bring Guccifer over from Romania and put him in the Virginia county jail. I can't remember the county, Fairfax County Jail. Because you have to put him on ice, right? Because you don't want him saying, hey, you know what, this new Goose 2 isn't really Goose 2. He has nothing to do with me. I don't know him. So now you can say Goose 2 can come out and say, hey, I'm really good buddies with Goose 1. I'm doing this all because of Goose 1. I got a lot of helicopter traffic over me. So that's Warren Flood. Warren Flood writes the memo. I'm sorry, this is a long description, but Warren Flood writes the memo, the first guy. There is a Warren Flood. I don't want you to think there isn't a Warren Flood. He's a CSIS kid. The CSIS is the intelligence community in Canada. And he trains up at either Ryerson or the University of Toronto, I can't remember which, and they bring him down as this young hotshot. He's half Cherokee, half black. They bring him down. And anyway, he's writing this memo of here's what the first leak is going to look like. And he writes it in WordPress. And unfortunately, WordPress drops these metadata of who's the creator of the document and what day it was created. Then it goes to the next person, and I can't remember, somebody else edits it and drops more metadata. And then finally, Guccifer 2 launches this WordPress site. And the first thing they launch because now they have to cover the Seth Rich leak, right? There's going to be, Julian Assange already on the 7th of June has said, we have a lot of stuff. So now they don't know what's coming, so they bring back Guccifer 2. They create this Guccifer 2 guy, and they are waiting to see what comes out. They're going to preempt now. They're going to preempt whatever Julian Assange says right before the convention on the 25th, July 25th I'm talking about. So they release the 5 pages of the Trump op-ed. They say, hey, I got a great idea. Let's have Guccifer 2 push out these 5 pages of op-ed of all the Trump trash, and then we'll get everybody focused on the Trump trash rather than whatever the heck is in those 44,000 documents with 17,761 attachments, right? So the convention happens a little bit later. I think the convention happens, I might have my dates wrong, it may be June 25th. Anyway, the convention happens, and Julian Assange, the day before the convention, comes out with the WikiLeaks. Well, Schumer goes to the airwaves, Schiff goes to the airwaves, the Russians. And that's really where the Russian narrative hoax starts. And we're still living in this narrative almost a year later.
Yeah. Well, all right, let me ask you this, George. Let's
go
go.
ahead.
I didn't want to interrupt, especially while you're on a roll here, but I had to.
Sure.
Look, so
Sure.
let's just going with what we know, including some stuff that we think we know and we're pretty sure is true. This is what it sounds like to me. It sounds to me like the Clinton machine wanted to take over the United States government. They had enough pedophilia. They had enough stuff going on, enough dirt on other people to be able to keep them quiet for a long time. In the meantime, Hildebeest is doing State Department business on a private server. Then, when it looks like Hillary is going to get in trouble for this, and she's pressuring FBI Director Comey to just keep this all cool, just don't. So he comes out with, oh, it's bad news, it's bad, it's terribly bad, and then he goes, well, but there's no prosecutor will take this case. Then the guy comes back out again right before the election and says, yes, it's really bad, but nothing actually ever happens. So do we think that Hillary Clinton, and to a lesser degree Bill Clinton, because certainly if her skeleton holding closets are opened, so will Bill's be opened. Do we think that they are so desperate that they resorted to murder to keep this thing going? Oh, the Russians hacked our election, the Russia WikiLeaks and all that stuff that old bag of pus keeps talking about. There were no Russian leaks. There were no emails released by the Russians. This was done by Seth Rich and probably a couple other people who are probably scared to death right now, but certainly Seth. And we talked with Liz Crokin yesterday about somebody near and dear to him that may have been in a position to help him with that. And so now you've got this fellow. You got the Awan brothers, okay, and then you've got all that theft that went on in the House of Representatives, all right? So now those guys are on the run. In the meantime, one of them at least has a contract to build routers for computer use, of course. We call them routers, but they're routers. A route is when you drive the remainder of your enemy forces out. That's a route. Okay, it's not Route 66, it's Route 66. So they were building routers. And there is information to suggest that these routers were compromised. And they've got a government contract to do this. In the meantime, this federal prosecutor who was investigating visa and passport fraud cases is 37 years old, right? Barrington J. Wisenant. I guess that's Wisenant. I
call him Wiseant because he's an ant, but he's wise.
Okay, got it.
But anyway, go ahead.
Then.
Yeah.
Fine, that'll work. But remember this name, folks. Barrington J. Wisenant. Okay? He's found in Florida. Looks like he's been busted in the head. They're not sure if he died there in the surf where he was floating or if he was killed somewhere else and dumped in the surf. So you've got Seth Rich is dead. Barrington is dead. Guccifer this, Guccifer that. I think this was a criminal overtaking of the United States government by the Clinton machine, if you will. And I think that they're just rubbing out as many people as possible in furtherance of this. I'll also go you another step further, and it's this. I think these people really are Satan worshipers. I think these people are so Look, Bill Clinton was basically what you'd call white trash. Hillary Clinton, well, her dad was a lawyer, I believe, but she's not much better. She went immediately to Chicago to hook up with people like Saul Alinsky, okay? They mobilize and they support every element of rabble that they can mobilize in support of their cause. Now, somebody took exception, it was one person took exception to a video I ran yesterday of these idiots at Evergreen College talking about slavery and hey ho, these racist teachers have got to go. Still holding on to slavery, because what the Clintons have done and what the Democrats do is they harness the ignorant and the stupid. These people are so stupid they do not realize that no one is alive today that has anything to do with slavery whatsoever, but they are so completely consumed with the dumbass that they are not in any way prepared to hey ho, the ancestors of the people who sold us into slavery, namely our own black brothers, have got to go. Okay, they won't go there. They won't accept the fact that their own people sold them into slavery. This is the kind of people that the ilk of Hillary Clinton and I've already said the word ilk. These are the people that and when 90% of the people do not have the capability to think independently, they have no critical thinking skills, at least not ones that have been developed yet. This is the rabble that is most easily harnessed. Well, looks like Bernie Sanders is going to get the nomination. So then what happens? The leaks come out. The Russians hacked our election. They cost me the presidency. And now that old bag is talking about running again in 2020 because I believe she knows that she and her whole damn crew are going to wind up in orange jumpsuits permanently if they don't keep this going and they don't keep fresh bodies being tossed into the weeds. They're going to have to keep doing what they're doing or they're over with completely. And everybody that has anything to do with them, they're over with too. In the meantime, the general public is, Hillary, and this idiot Kathy Griffin with her simulated beheading of the president and all of this. And and Maxine Waters and all these other people that are out there just beating the drum for impeachment and all this. My opinion is it's because they're criminals and they are scared to death that they're going to be found out. And I want to go back to that thing you said one more time. I want everybody to hear this. What's this deal, this agreement that was made between CIA and FBI one more time? Something 25 or 5 or what was it? Georgi.
John?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's PDD 62, Presidential Directive. The difference between an executive order and a presidential decision directive is a presidential decision directive is secret, and it's stored in the National Archives under executive privilege. And I can't remember what the executive privilege code is. I think it's an E5.
I wonder if that's among the documents that got spirited out of the National Archives by Clinton operatives.
Oh, no, I got it. I published it about 120 days ago, and I've continually come back about every 30 days and shown PDD 62.
Good. Well, that sort of takes away the restriction on CIA operating within the country, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and the FBI's restriction on operating internationally. So we can basically become a cabal now, or a kind of it's a merger really between the CIA and the counterterrorism. The CTD, they used to call it, but now they call it the CI to make it sound more like intelligence gathering.
All right,
but make no mistake, both of these are covert operations. Now, there's a big wall between the FBI field, and I want to make sure that people don't think I'm trying to say that any of this happened with FBI field people. Those are some of my best leads and some of the, really good patriots.
Yeah. All right, now let me ask you this. You see this information. You see the timeline of the release of the information and or the discovery of first the discovery and then whatever release of the information, right? You see this timeline.
Yes.
So you've been able to look back a long way. Question is, can you see ahead? Where is this all going to lead eventually? And what are the potential roadblocks to a sufficiently large release that will result in prosecution?
Well, I think you have to convince the folks at Bilderberg that it's better that they just take the lumps now and just do the metadata now and let everybody, say, okay, we're going to get rid of Schiff and Schumer and whatnot. And you wouldn't even have to do that. You just release the Hillary documents and then it'll take the hot off the boil. You know what I mean? Just put out the Hillary documents, just the metadata, so that everybody can see, okay, Human is a bad person, deport her, Anthony Weiner's involved, okay, whatever. Give him immunity or whatever, however many, but just get the information out so that it stops the wolf, all these people searching. And that's my best solution because Hillary's got Jeffrey Epstein's airplane. They could put the whole crew on the airplane and fly to Casablanca tomorrow. They've gotten $28 million from the King of Morocco to provide safe harbor, no extradition treaty. They have all got property in Casablanca. They could do the same thing in Nigeria. They could do the same thing in 10 different countries. So Hillary going to jail is kind of a pipe dream, to be honest with you. But the data does need to be exposed otherwise, and the Awan brothers need to be cleaned out. The American public's not going to be comfortable anymore without all the Awan brothers hacks exposed. So that means the Democratic caucus hacks, that means the DNC leaks, that means we already have Podesta leaks and we already have the Seth Rich leaks, but the Huma server, the 650,000 that Trump called the treasure trove, that's got to be released. At least the metadata.
All right. Let's say that they do that. You're talking blowback containment here, but what about where will they go based on what you have seen? What will their next step? They obviously want to control the U.S. government. They obviously want an authoritarian regime.
Over. That's over. What you're going to have is kind of a church committee. They'll start a church committee, which is run by somebody like Frank Church, who really is serious. You'll start up a parallel committee in the Senate. Whatever happens in the House, you're going to start a parallel committee in the Senate to try to stay up with the evidence. You'll hire a Hillary to steal the documents from the House committee to push them over to the Senate committee. Sort of what they did with the Rockefeller Commission. The Rockefeller Commission is created to kind of be the Senate overshadower of the church committee. Although Frank's, and maybe the other way around, maybe Frank's church was a senator from Idaho, so maybe I've got that backwards. But anyway, you get the idea that you have somebody, you infiltrate that committee and you get documents. You get Hillary to copy I'm going back to the Watergate investigation, but you get somebody to copy the documents every night. And then you come out with your findings and you come out with your workarounds of what you think it is. So you got a parallel investigation going. Now, that's not going to stop the carnage. There's still going to be reforms, and there's still going to be people lose their job, and so forth. But this is what's going to happen. A church committee type of situation is next step. That's the only recovery from this to get the public's trust back.
Have you discovered anything that suggests a direct threat? I don't mean something done by the lame media. I'm talking about a direct threat against this president.
Yes, that's the Kim.com thing. That's the Pompeo thing. So apparently, if you believe the Pompeo story in New Zealand, Comey goes down there with McCabe to meet with Five Eyes. The reason why you want the Five Eyes being New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and British intelligence services. And the reason why you meet with them is you want them to validate. You want to hit whatever you say the next day with a validation stamp and go, I've never worked with a finer intelligence professional than James Comey, that kind of thing. But everybody has to be ready to go with the cameras when you do this. But then you come out and you say, whatever it is, we're going to say Trump, leaked information or did something, and he needs to be impeached. We need to call for impeachment. Then they're going to go around the Five Eyes and say, we need Senate committee. Now Bob Mueller's the special counsel. Bob Mueller's going to call all the conspirators. So all the Five Eyes come out, stamp it, and now we we make a big public hearings, just like Watergate, and you bring in Kim.com, and he says, I knew Seth Rich, blah, blah, blah. And that's a nothing burger. But really, it was the Russians, So there's going to be some kind of coaching or whatever. They're going to bring back the Russia narrative. That was the plan, supposedly, they discussed in New Zealand. Now, the only problem is Mike Pompeo is in the same meeting from CIA, and he's supposedly playing along with this, with the meeting in Ken.com. Supposedly, he's recording this. Now, I have a lot of intelligence contracts that are overseas. I'm sorry I'm at the pier, so I get background noise. Overseas, but I don't have, well, actually, that's not true. I got some intelligence contracts in contacts in the U.S. as well, but they're not as good as the ones I have overseas. But supposedly what happens is Pompeo records it, this conspiracy between McCabe and Comey. So as soon as he finds out that information, he wires it back to Washington, SCIF, secured communications, but then Comey is fired while he is away in L.A. giving a speech. His office is ransacked. They collect all the information. They've got the whole rat line now. Now, they can take McCabe out, I think, anytime they want, but I believe there's some negotiations going on back and forth now about trying to keep McCabe. So that's the whole overthrow. The overthrow was have this, Lindsey Graham and McCain come out and say, this is just one, hurdle too far. I have to go along with impeachment. My moral crisis is such that I have to, vote for impeachment. And if it got to the Senate, but the House would be fairly quick in getting the required votes to impeach, and then the Senate you'd have all these, hand wringing, but then they would impeach Trump and put in Pence. So it was going to be a soft coup. It wasn't going to be a blood coup or a wet coup. But now it's looking like the conspiracy is falling apart because McCabe, I believe, was in that same New Zealand meeting. He might not have been. So now blood coup becomes much more realistic, and this is easily done with a fence jumper at the White House. Secret Service just looks the other way, and there's a fence jumper that's supposed to try some doors. Tries the one door that gets in and goes into the bedroom and shoots Trump. So, or there's a million other ways, obviously, but that's the fence jumper is the one that the public seems to accept, that for some reason somebody can climb an 8-foot fence in the most electronically surveilled space in the United States.
Sure, they're already cranking the narrative out.
And be there 15 minutes to try every door on the outside.
Yeah. Oh, brother.
Yeah.
All right, well.
And there's really no defense. There's no defense against that. So.
Yeah, I think there is. Send somebody a message. But that's just me.
Yeah.
George,
right.
I've enjoyed this very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate. I really appreciate your coming to us first like this. I really do. And it's not like we're trying to cast our wonderfulness into just this really, really sharp and tight relief for everybody. But we do like to be on it. And certainly, you got your hands full with everything that you do. It'd be totally impossible for us to assemble this kind of information on our own. We have to have contact with persons like yourself, and so far, I mean, you're one of a kind, pal. You really are, and I thank you very much for coming on the program and breaking this stuff. It's great.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Now, I had a little issue with Podesta's boys yesterday in Brooklyn.
Really?
So don't sit on this forever because just don't sit on it too long. When does this air?
About 10 o'clock tonight.
Okay, great. I'll be listening. Thanks, John.
What about the run-in with Podesta's boys before you go? What happened?
Oh, you'll see it if you want to see the whole thing yesterday or the day before yesterday. I'm in the hotel. They closed down the stairs shaft. They closed down the elevator. The elevator guy comes in. I start to go down the elevator, and we're stopping at every floor. There was problems with the elevator. I think, oh, shit, this guy's giving the SEIU guy the keys. The only reason I suspected it is these two guys from, huge guys come in right on my shoulder when I'm checking in to see what room I'm in, and then they leave. They say they had rooms, and they say, well, we changed their mind. We want to see the room first. And the get out there is, I want to see the room, and the room sucks, and I'm leaving. So they were just there to see where I was. Well, so they're not in the hotel, right? So then the next day, when the elevators are screwed up, I get out of the elevator because it's going to be stopping on every floor with the elevator guy. I come back out. I'm waiting. The door opens, and it's the same two guys that were on my shoulder the day before when I checked in. These guys who had supposedly left the hotel, and they're monsters, right? So I said, you know what, guys, you take the next elevator. So there is a little bit of a time boundness to this interview. I don't know at any, you know what I mean?
I do.
I'm not on Possess's favorite list. Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, he's not on our favorite list either. Matter of fact, he's on the brown list.
Make copies. Yeah.
Yeah. There's only one way to get off of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Make copies if you can.
All right.
Okay.
Well, God bless you. Thank you so much, George. Stay healthy and stay in touch. All right.
I will do. Thanks, John. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. By the way, the reason that we ran the video of those idiots out there was not to give them a platform so they could spread their hate and so forth. I'm trying to show people what you're up against once the bitches are loosed from their chains. Bitches, did you really say that? Yeah, look it up. Of malicious or vicious nature. Number 2, a female dog. I'm not talking about female dogs. I'm not talking about female anything. I'm talking about the head trip and the attitude. Mindless, malicious, and vicious. And it is our solemn duty to make sure that that is not visited upon our neighborhoods. We have to get ahead of this. We need to act, not react. When you're in reaction mode, well, there's another way to state that in 2 words. You're late.